Well, I think we're ready to get started for the deep dive of this morning. So welcome to everybody joining this Monday morning, December 20th, for the deep dive. Good to be with you. If you saw the announcements, we're talking about inflation and specifically home ownership as a hedge against inflation, probably one of the more talked about topics in the news personally today. So we're going to cover that on the deep dive today, and excited about talking about that. This will be the last deep dive of the year. We'll take next Monday off as we're going to kind of give you some time there, and then we'll come back the first of the year and kick off the deep dive as we get started in the new year. So homeownership as a hedge against inflation, big topic. I think, as we're together with people over the holidays, over the next few weeks, hopefully you have time for that we're going to talk a lot about inflation, a lot of questions about inflation. Maybe I'm thinking about doing something in real estate, buying or selling, but this question of, inflation starts to come up. And I'm going to go ahead and share my slides and we'll get started with this topic. So our topic this morning, I mentioned home ownership as a hedge against inflation. My goal over the next few minutes is to give you a few expert perspectives, a few visuals that you can use to explain this topic to the clients that you serve. So let's kind of kick this off and get started. First of all, a quote here from Ben Carlson, a portfolio management wealth manager. Housing is one of the most effective hedges against inflation. Investing is not just about building wealth, it's also about not destroying wealth. That's a key point there. Even a small return above the rate of inflation over the long term on a place you would like to live in any ways is a pretty sweet deal. So, this inflation topic, I don't think is going away into the new year. We're going to hear more and more about it. And what's the best hedge against inflation? Certainly a fixed housing cost is going to be a great hedge against inflation. We're going to talk about rents in just a minute as well. But if you think about rising cost in everything, housing is not immune to that. And we've seen, tremendous home price appreciation over the last couple of years now across the country. And, those that go out and buy a home have a fixed housing cost. You think about the fixed interest rates right now, the average 30-year fix still being 3.1%. As you go forward, that remains the same as inflation continues on. But let's continue on this path and let's continue this conversation. Second quote here, Mark Cusson, financial writer from Investopedia. Real estate is one of the time-honored inflation hedges. It's a tangible asset, and those tend to hold their value when inflation reigns, unlike paper assets. More specifically, as prices rise, so do property values. So hearing over and over, real estate is a hedge against inflation. What you want to do in an inflationary economy is you don't want to step off the merry-go-round, so to speak. You don't want to be in cash and other assets like that. You want to be in intangible assets that are going to appreciate in value. You think about the person that maybe says, hey, we're going to sell right now, maybe wait till things cool down. I would not advise somebody in doing that because home prices are going to continue to appreciate. What our team did at KCM is went back and looked at home prices as compared to inflation going all the way back to the 70s. And I want to show you that graphic in just a minute, because I think this is going to be one of the keys to helping to explain inflation as it comes, as it regards to housing. So let's look at this graphic right here. If you think about this, this is a look at home price appreciation versus consumer price increases over the decades going all the way back to the 70s. The blue there being the inflation rate, green being the home price appreciation. This is the average annually in those decades. So let's go back to the 70s. Inflation rate there, 7.1%. Home price appreciation, 9.9%. Homes outperform the inflation rate. Where do you want to be? Always in an inflationary economy. You want to be in something that's going to outperform that inflation. 1980s, pretty much neck and neck. Inflation rate slightly outperforms home prices, 5.6% to 5.5%. 90s, home prices outperform inflation. 2000s, inflation slightly outperforms home prices. You can see that there. We know why that was. Certainly the housing crisis, and in our business, we're very familiar with that. 2010s, housing very much outperformed inflation, and certainly over the last couple of years, housing has dramatically outperformed inflation. So when you look back over time, more times than not, housing has outperformed inflation. A couple of instances where it's almost been neck and neck. And so I think being able to use this graphic and maybe having it on your phone, maybe having it somewhere as you're having this conversation with people will be really, really critical in the coming weeks and months as inflation is talked about more and more, as hedges against inflation become more and more important with housing. But, you know, I think this is going to be apparent for people renting as well. We want to be able to talk to them about, do you want to be renting during a time like this? But let's continue the conversation. I want to go here with a quote from Bankrate, James Royal. He says, a fixed rate mortgage allows you to maintain the biggest portion of housing expense at the same payment. Sure, property taxes will rise and other expenses may creep up, but your monthly housing payment remains the same. That's certainly not the case if you're renting. So again, going back to the average 30-year fixed, 3.1%, you go out and buy a home today at today's prices, that payment remains the same going forward. Maybe you refinance, maybe something like that, but you don't have to. And you lock in that payment at today's cost. Now let's look at renters. Somebody who's renting, how has renting performed versus inflation? I've got another look at that, almost similar to the one we just looked at here. Rent increases tend to be greater than inflation in most years. This is a look at rent price appreciation and core inflation going all the way back to the 70s as well. Core inflation being the blue line in this graphic, rental price appreciation being the green line. And just visually, you can see it right here. The green lines oftentimes are above the blue lines, a couple of dips down. But what that means is rents are increasing faster most times than inflation. Again, if you're renting, you want to, if you can get into a home and it's right for you and you can have a fixed housing cost, that's what you want in an inflationary economy. Now, no doubt there are folks that need to rent, and there are good reasons for that. But if somebody is considering, well, maybe we'll rent until things slow down, I would show them this graphic, because as inflation continues, that will continue on. You want to go ahead and get on board if you're going to buy a house sooner rather than later. Certainly, you know, we've talked about this on the deep dive. The outlook for interest rates is that will increase going into the new year and throughout 2022. But I want to continue this, give you a couple other quotes here in this topic, just to arm you well to have these conversations. Forbes says this: homeowners are shielded from mounting rental prices because their cost is fixed. Again, going back to the fixed cost, regardless of what's happening in the market. Tangible assets like real estate get more valuable over time, which makes buying a home a good way to spend your money during inflationary times. You know, we've talked about this, 10 years from now, I believe anybody that's buying a home today will be bragging about what they bought, the price they paid for it, and the interest rate they have on it as inflation continues, as home price appreciation continues. Last slide here. If you have cash and are expecting inflation, you want to think through where you can put your money so it does not lose value. Housing is commonly looked at as a good inflation hedge, especially with interest rates so low. So those sitting on cash that are wondering, where should we park it? Should we go in, put more on a down payment? Should we go out and buy a home? I would say absolutely yes. My hope is that the slides that we're using here for the deep dive help you communicate that effectively and have this conversation about inflation, because I don't think it's going away. I think it's going to continue to be talked about. And my hope is that through what we do at Keeping Current Matters, you are the best educated agent on this topic for the clients that you serve. So as always, we are grateful for your support of the deep dive this entire year. Grateful for everybody that joins. If you have questions about this, you can always reach out to us, David at Keeping Current Matters. I know Jessica in the chat will put that in there. She's responding to things, but know from our team, we're extremely grateful for you and for the support you give us for what we do at Keeping Current Matters. This is the last deep dive of the year. Like I mentioned, we'll see you back in the new year and look forward to seeing everybody then. Take care. Have a great week.